Ever get that? Like, you're in a room full of people, but you feel totally alone. You're laughing along, but deep down, it's like hollow. Today, we're diving into that loneliness.
Yeah, it's something we don't always talk about, do we?
Totally. And it's not about, like, slapping on a happy face and pretending it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
We're going deeper. We're going to uncover what actually works to deal with loneliness, not just, the surface stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like this weird thing, loneliness. It's like we're supposed to be constantly connected 24/7, and if we're not, there's something wrong.
Right, right. It's like it's a flaw or something.
Exactly. But the reality is, I think most of us deal with it at some point. And then that's what we're doing in this deep dive. We're taking away that shame. Loneliness is a human thing.
It is. And I think what's so interesting, when I was prepping for this, loneliness, it's not always about being physically alone, is it? It's way more than that.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's more like this feeling of disconnect, like a lack of meaningful connection. That's the real sting. It's like you can be at a party, right?
Right.
Surrounded by tons of people.
Even people you like.
Right. But still feel totally and completely alone.
The worst.
It is. And Carl Jung, the psychologist,
Yeah.
you familiar?
Yeah, of course.
He said it perfectly. He's like, loneliness comes not from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to oneself.
Wow. When you hear it like that, it's like,
Powerful, right?
yeah, and a little sad, like you're starving for this, like, nourishment, but all you're getting is junk food. Like, you could be surrounded but still famished.
100%.
And so ignoring that hunger, pretending it isn't there, that takes a toll.
Right.
Can't be good for you.
You're so right. And we hear all the time that loneliness is bad for you, but why? We should probably get into the specifics a bit.
Yes, please.
Because it's not just some, abstract thing. It has an actual physical effect. Chronic loneliness, it actually floods your body with these stress hormones. Cortisol, you've heard of that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So your blood pressure goes up, you have more inflammation, and over time, this sets the stage for, well, pretty serious stuff. Heart disease, diabetes, even dementia.
Okay, so we're not messing around here. Loneliness is a big deal. So then, where do we even begin? One thing that stood out to me, and this seemed kind of backwards at first, but this idea of, becoming your own best company.
Interesting. Right.
Yeah, because I feel like if you're lonely, shouldn't you be, surrounding yourself with people, not seeking out more alone time?
Yeah, it's funny, right? It does seem a little bit counterintuitive when you put it like that. But I think it's less about, literally being alone all the time.
Yeah.
And more about this shift,
Okay.
It's like, instead of constantly looking to other people for happiness, for validation, what if you could find that, contentment, that fulfillment from within yourself?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, but, easier said than done, right?
Oh, for sure. But think of it this way. Seeking validation from outside yourself, it's kind of like building your house on rented land. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. You're kind of at the mercy of everybody else.
Right.
But when you can enjoy your own company, when you find that inner peace, that's like building a strong foundation. And from there, the connections you do make, they're going to come from a much healthier place.
Wow, yeah. Okay, so not about being a loner, but being good with yourself first.
Exactly.
So then how do you actually do that? What does enjoying your own company even look like? Day to day, I mean.
Right. It's not about, running off to a deserted island.
Yeah.
Although, little escape never hurt anybody.
True, but true.
But really, it's more about, shifting your focus. Instead of always looking for things outside of yourself to entertain you, validate you, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What if you spend some time each day doing something that really lights you up from the inside?
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
Yeah, but how do we find those things? It's sometimes I feel like my main hobby is just scrolling on my phone, hoping something will, inspire me. Oh, I've been there. Definitely. But I don't think it's always about this big aha moment, discovering your passions. It's more about, approaching things with a sense of curiosity.
Oh.
Playfulness, even. Remember being a kid? You'd try anything. Just dive in head first.
Yeah.
You didn't overthink it. So it's tap back into that energy. Sign up for that pottery class you've been thinking about, right?
Yeah.
Dust off the old guitar. Maybe volunteer somewhere.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. Just say yes to new experiences and see what happens.
Yeah, that's so important, the beginner's mindset.
It is.
It's not about being good right away. It's just about, trying and
finding that joy in the process.
Yes, exactly.
And hey, maybe you do discover some hidden talent or like this lifelong passion.
Yeah.
But even if you don't, right? Even if you don't become the next Picasso.
Well, like walk star.
Exactly. Just the act of doing something you genuinely enjoy, something that challenges you, something that like pulls you out of your head. That's where the magic happens, you know? You start to feel more connected to yourself, to like your own creativity. I don't know, you just start to feel this sense of purpose.
I love that.
Right.
But I do wonder, like, what about the times when loneliness feels less like an invitation to explore and more like a giant warning sign, you know? Is it always telling us to just go find a hobby?
Oh, man, that's such a good question. And honestly, sometimes it's not about distraction. Sometimes it's about going inward.
Okay.
Think of it like a check engine light on your like emotional dashboard.
Okay, I like that.
It's not necessarily that something's like totally breaking, but it is a sign to, pay attention.
Right.
It might be saying, hey, look at your relationships, your career. What are your values? Do these things actually align with who you are and what you want?
So it's that friend who's not afraid to tell you what you need to hear.
Right.
Even if it's not what you want to hear.
100%. And that's where those practices, those like introspective practices, I think that's where they come in.
Okay, like what?
Well, like journaling. That's a big one.
Oh, yeah.
It's like having a conversation with yourself, but on paper.
Right, right.
And sometimes just the act of writing things down, can help you see patterns.
Totally.
You can get some clarity on what's really bugging you. Maybe uncover some stuff you didn't even realize you were holding on to, like hidden beliefs, fears.
That's untangling a knot, you know? Sometimes you have to look at it from all these different angles before you can figure out how to untie it.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
And then there's meditation. I've heard that can help. But I gotta be honest, that one always seemed a little...
intimidating.
Yeah. Like a little too woo-woo for me.
I get it. But it doesn't have to be this big mystical thing. Think of it less about like emptying your mind and more about just like creating space between your thoughts.
Okay.
It's about becoming like an observer of your own internal dialogue, without judgment. And the more you do it, you actually start to realize that you're not your thoughts, You're the awareness experiencing them.
Whoa. Okay. That's kind of blowing my mind a little bit.
It's powerful stuff. And it can be really empowering. You start to detach from those negative thought loops, the ones that just spiral and spiral.
Oh, yeah.
And that can be a game changer when it comes to dealing with loneliness, with anxiety, with all of it.
So you're basically building like a mental muscle.
Yeah, exactly. Building that emotional resilience.
I like that.
And the more you cultivate that inner strength, the better you're going to be at like handling those inevitable moments of loneliness,
They're going to happen.
Oh, they will happen.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean you have to fall apart. But, it's interesting. We've been talking about being alone, enjoying your own company and all of that.
Yeah.
Which is so important. But I think it's also important to remember that we as humans, we're wired for connection too.
That's true. It's not about becoming a hermit and like hiding away from the world.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between having a rich inner life and having those meaningful connections with other people.
And you said meaningful. That feels really important because it's not just about being around people, right? It's about those deep, genuine connections where you feel truly seen, truly understood.
Yeah, and that's what's been kind of like swirling around in my head this whole time. It's like we're told to like collect friends, like they're stamps or something.
Right.
But what's the point if they're not the kind of connections that like actually nourish you?
100%.
So then like how do you do that? Go from like just craving that deep connection to actually having it in your life because, man, it feels way easier said than done.
It really does. And I think, honestly, the first step is probably the hardest, which is kind of letting go of this idea that you have to like find the perfect person or the perfect group of people that are just going to come in and like fix it all,
Oh, yeah, I get that. It's more about, I don't know, I think it's more about approaching connection just in general with a sense of curiosity.
Right.
Openness and just being open to like being surprised by the people you meet.
So instead of like, oh, I need to find my missing piece.
Right, exactly. Like that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it is.
It's more like, you're an adventurer.
Oh, I like that.
And you're just out in the world and you're excited to see like what gems you might uncover, what paths you're going to forge.
That is so much better than like the frantic search for the missing piece. I love that.
It's a much more fun way to live.
It is. But then, like, what about those of us who are not naturally social butterflies? I'm picturing myself, like, trying to strike up a conversation with someone and just, like, internally panicking.
I hear you. I hear you. Putting yourself out there is scary.
It is.
But it's like, you don't have to become like the life of the party overnight.
Yeah.
Baby steps. Start small. Think about things you've been to. Like, are there groups, clubs? Is there anything in your area that feels aligned with like your interests, your values?
Okay, yeah.
Because even just finding those shared interests, that's like building a bridge.
Yeah. It gives you something to talk about. I'm already feeling less panicky.
Right. It's like that whole birds of a feather flock together thing. You've just got to find your flock.
Find your flock. Yes. Love it. But then what if you, like, try all that and you still kind of feel like you're, I don't know, like, stuck in the mud?
Yeah.
Is it okay to, like, admit defeat? Or...
No. Never admit defeat.
Okay, good.
First of all, you've got to remember that, like, building those genuine connections, it takes time,
Right.
This is not a quick fix.
Right.
But if you've been trying and it's just not happening, or you feel like you're hitting a wall, it is totally okay to reach out for some help.
Okay, like what kind of help?
I mean, a therapist. Talking to a therapist can be so helpful because they can give you that space, to really dig into, like, what's at the root of this?
Yeah.
And they can help you learn those skills,
Yeah.
the coping mechanisms, all of that.
It's like having a personal trainer,
Yes.
but for your, like, emotional well-being.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Because sometimes, honestly, sometimes loneliness, it comes from a place of, like, fear.
Oh.
Fear of vulnerability, fear of being, like, truly known.
Yeah.
Even by yourself.
Oh, wow.
And it's in those moments, the moments where you can, like, be vulnerable, where you let your guard down a little. That's where that true connection, that's where it happens.
That's so interesting you say that about vulnerability being, like, the key. It reminds me of Brene Brown. You're familiar with her work?
Oh, yeah, I love Brene Brown.
She talks about how, like, connection is why we're here. It's like it gives our lives purpose.
Yes.
But
yeah,
you can't have connection without vulnerability. It's like the price of admission.
100%. And that doesn't just go for like romantic relationships.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It's your friends, it's your family, it's like your relationship with yourself even.
Okay.
It's about like being able to embrace, the messy parts.
The imperfection.
Yeah, because that's where those real connections are made, when you can just be your authentic self.
Love that. So we've talked about, like, getting comfortable with yourself, building those connections, finding a therapist if you need one. But it seems like there's one, like, final piece here. And that's, like, accepting that loneliness is just part of life sometimes.
Yeah, got it.
It is.
Like, as much as we try, right?
Yeah.
As fulfilling as our lives are, the people we surround ourselves with, those moments are still going to come up.
They do.
Because it's a human emotion, just like happiness or sadness, you know? It's going to come, it's going to go. And the more you resist it, honestly,
yeah,
the worse it gets.
It's like that thing, like trying to outrun your own shadow or something.
Exactly. It's impossible. But what if instead of being afraid of those moments, of those feelings, you embraced them?
Oh, okay.
What if you looked at it as an opportunity, like, oh, this is my chance to like reconnect with myself, maybe get some writing done. I don't know, be creative.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like for you.
Instead of, I shouldn't be feeling this way. It's more like, okay, what is this here to teach me?
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes those moments where you feel the most alone, those are the moments where you have the biggest breakthroughs. It's like Rilke, the poet. He said, the quieter you become, the more you can hear.
Oh, I love that.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, maybe loneliness shows up, but instead of freaking out, it's like, okay, this is an invitation to go inward, to listen.
Yes, exactly.
And maybe what you find there is like even more strength, even more resilience.
100%. And, just remember, in those moments, even when you feel totally, completely alone, you're not.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I needed to hear that.
We all do. We all do. You carry within you like this well of wisdom, and strength and resilience, and you are connected to everything and everyone.
That's a beautiful thought to end on. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing all of this with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
And to everyone listening, we hope this deep dive into loneliness has left you feeling, well, a little less lonely.
And a little more empowered.
Yes. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. We're all in this together.